So this morning, we are joined by the country's Minister of Information and Civic Education, Hon I.B. He's here to talk about, His Excellency's speech, the promises in there, plans for this year, and what the government did last year to, improve the country's economy, governance, and food particularly, which I'm sure most of you are quite keen about. Good morning, Mr. Minister. It's a pleasure having you as always. Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year to you, my brother. Congratulations. I think you had a fantastic year here at AYV, but also personally in the station. And I think as a country last year, especially in our sector in media and press freedom, we continue to make steady progress. So we're delighted that we're in a new year, and as the President has declared, it's going to be a year of action. So we have to double down and do more.
Let's first review what major highlight would you point to last year in terms of reforms that the government did?
I think last year was a year of stabilization. The President's speech said we took some tough steps. We stabilized the country, the economy. We stabilized and invested in major reforms so that we can now build on those in 2026 with action and demonstrable progress in the lives of people. But let me be clear, there are some concrete gains we can all celebrate from 2025. In my mind, the most significant one was the stabilization of our security sector. 2025, in my mind, was the first year since President Bio came to power that we did not have any major disruptions in peace, in stability in the country. You remember back then, people would sit in their capitals around the world and tell us not to go to school, shut down our markets, force our young kids to be out in the streets, shoot our police officers, kill our military officers. This has been a consistent pattern since President Bio was in power. In 2025, the first and most sacred task a president has is to provide security for the people. We just saw December close. Parties upon parties, upon festivals, upon festivals. And I'll tell you what, very soon this week we'll also release numbers of incomings at the airports, and you will see that this country is becoming more and more of a destination. And I'll assure you, my brother, the foundation of that is there's peace, is there's security, and people feel safe to go about their business. So if you ask me, the single biggest achievement last year is no major security disruptions. We must commend our security forces. We must commend the Commander-in-Chief himself, who sets the tone, who sets the bar, who puts in place. But we must commend our citizens who were vigilant, who have said very clearly in our actions, we no want kunaya, we will not tolerate indiscipline, we will not be part of any efforts to undermine the stability of our state. So that's number one. There's another major achievement in 2025, and that's the stabilization of our economy. Now, by any measure, we did not receive a single major disbursement last year from our international partners, whether it was IMF or World Bank, because we were in programs, we were in basic reviews. We had to take some tough steps. We needed to bring inflation down. Inflation was flying, skyrocketing just over a year ago, over 50%. We have brought it down to lower than the African average. 4%. It's in the 4% now in terms of the inflation rates in the country. Take the Leones, the strength of the Leones. It was suffering from runaway inflation. It was not stable. The exchange rate was a problem. Last year, for almost from the start of the year until the end of the year, the Leones and the dollar exchange rates was essentially flat. We managed to stabilize the economy because that's the basis of everything else that it's going to build. We moved as well from deficits, which the rest of the world was suffering from, and transitioned to modest growth. Not at the rate that we want it, but I can also assure you higher than the rate of our partners, especially in the subcontinent, but at par with what is going on in the rest of the continent. Mm-hmm. So we have infused a lot of efforts in bringing the economy under control and attracting foreign direct investments, in ensuring that the Leone is stable and can compete, and kept prices of major commodities under control. In the past, every December you will expect to line for fuel. You do not experience that this year. This has been a consistent pattern in this country for years. You do not experience a single shortage this year, and the prices did not go up unceremoniously. That is significant success. Rice, which is our major commodity, and we have a feed salon program which the president referenced. We have invested major in cultivating local rice, in reducing the price of rice. We have invested in ensuring that there's a formula for major commodities in our markets. We cut down on shortages in, for example, onions, which we suffered from 2 years ago or 3 years ago when there are other shocks in other places in the world. But you see all of those are now stable. We've seen our prices increase. We've seen export of agricultural commodities increase by 12% in 2025. So when you look at all the core indicators, again, the president said it, we did not take off. But I can assure you, my brother, what's any honest assessment of our performance will tell you is we stabilized the ship, we stabilized the economy, we ensure the security sector is safe and stable, and we are now ready to take off significantly in 2026. That's why His Excellency said 2026 must be a year of action, but not reckless spending, not hoodwinking the public. He said it's going to be a year of honesty, to live within our means, because the gains we have made on the economy, we need to maintain those gains. And that's why we had a pro-people budget. That's why we had a pro-people finance bill, which have some really clear indicators. And when you ask me, I think in subsequent questions about what our plans are, that's what I'm going to be guided by. Because I want to look at what the finance bill said. I want to look at what because that's our priorities. That's where we have stated what we will do. And on all of those things we have said, we're going to invest in our people. We're going to double down on what the president said, action that will translate into positives for the lives of ordinary Sierra Leoneans in food security, because he said a country that cannot feed itself is vulnerable, and it's not a sovereign country. So we're going to build on the stability and the gains that we've made to accelerate that, to bring prices down, to make foods affordable and plenty for our people. We're going to continue to invest in education. We cannot afford to ignore education. That's why we have maintained our spending levels on education. We're the biggest spenders of education of any country in the sub-region. In fact, in the entire Africa, as a percentage of our GDP, we spend competitively as anybody else on the continent. That's because this president believes in human capital development. He believes in the people of this country. That's something we're going to continue to do, build more schools, support teachers, come up with different means to ensure we increase quality, because now it's no longer about access. We've ticked the access box. We've got all the kids, as many of our kids in school. We've reached parity levels in terms of gender inclusion within the school system. We have a policy for radical inclusion that's continued to advance, bringing minorities and people who were left out into the school system. But now we need to continue to invest in the quality. Health. It's a big issue the president referenced as well. We reduce maternal mortality, one of the biggest indicators of how you're performing on healthcare. But you've seen the investments we've made in places as far as Kono. We're building state-of-the-art facilities there. We're building state-of-the-art facilities across the country. We're improving on the number of doctors that we have. When President Bio came to power in 2018, think about how many doctors were graduating from our medical school in the country. We have significantly increased that number. We have created a system where our doctors can be trained here. They don't have to leave anymore to become specialized. And we'll continue to increase not just the number, but also the way we treat them, so that they can stay within our system, increase the resources that we pay them. And as you said as well at the Civic Festival, the Minister of Labor and Employment announced an increase in minimum wage. This is also part of our commitment to be pro-people in 2026, and that action that President Bio mentioned. So there's a whole set of things I can talk about, but I think the summary is this. In 2025, we stabilized across the board. 2026 is time for action, and the people are going to feel the effect of the stability that we've accomplished, the new investment that are coming in because of that stability. IMF, World Bank, EU, you saw how we closed the year. They all announced additional investments in Sierra Leone. By the way, including in the US. The US announced a pact with Sierra Leone, separate from MCC, which is going to bring $500 million. We're going to move one step closer to that investments in the economy, but also in the health sector. They've announced that Sierra Leone is one of 4 countries on the continent that they're going to make a health compact with, thanks to the good work that our Minister of Health has done. So we're going to see all of those investments come in. That's going to have a real effect as well in the economy, but it's going to be about how we work on the agriculture sector, which is our priority, to increase food production, to get more people in there, to mechanize the farming, to give people access to, for example, the Agriculture Development Bank that we're going to create, access to loans and different kinds of incentives for people to be involved in agriculture entrepreneurship. So 2026, you're going to feel it. That's what I'll say to people.
Good morning, Honorable.
Good morning.
Honorable Ibrahim Ben Kargbo was a former member of parliament and a strategic member, within the main opposition All People's Congress party. It's a pleasure having you this morning.
And a former Minister of Information.
Indeed, former Minister of Information as well.
You have to say that.
Both comms ministers seated together this morning on our sofa. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
I wouldn't want to put words in your mouth, but I would ask you for your honest assessment of the performance of His Excellency Julius Maada Bio, particularly for last year.
Well, I listened to my young friend here. One thing that is a little bit confusing is that the figures are good.
Okay.
The data is good. The narrative is good. But of course, these successes have not trickled down to the ordinary person. And they go out to the streets of Freetown, people complain about joblessness. They complain about hunger, a lot of difficulties. And yet when you look at the figures are impressive. So you ask yourself the question, what has gone wrong? Is it the PR that is faulty? Or is it that we have not trained our people to benefit from the resources of the state? So these are some of the questions we keep on asking ourselves. Like I said, Julius Maada Bio came to power with a very impressive manifesto. Even those of us in the opposition accepted it, we saw it as a people's-oriented manifesto, for which we were very, very proud. And quite a number of us were quite willing to support him, believing that that manifesto would work. But of course, again, his policies, as they unfolded as time went on, became very, very useful policies. You take the agriculture policy, for example, the feed silo, and it's acceptable. You cannot criticize it. It's a people-oriented program. The educational program, which seeks to educate our people, our youth, etc., etc. But again, we'll come to the question, what has gone wrong? Well, how come the people are still complaining that things are difficult in this country? Now, we are talking about the exchange rate in this country, our currency, and how it relates with the economy and the performance of the government itself. I felt embarrassed when I read recently that we are classified as the second weakest currency in the whole of Africa. It means that our monetary policy has some problems. How do we address those issues? The Bank of Sierra Leone has never come out openly to tell us what has gone wrong, to the extent that we are classified as the weakest currency in the whole of Africa. And a good number of activities do occur at the international level as well. We've been talking about the introduction of the ECO. The economy was supposed to be part of a global or a West African economy. The currency that was supposed to be part of the West African system. At one time, we used to communicate the developments with members of the public. At least the Bank of Sierra Leone used to do that. I used to travel to Accra to meet some of our friends there to discuss the stages at which we are progressing. But for a very long time now, the Bank of Sierra Leone in Sierra Leone has just kept quiet. We do not know whether, in fact, we are preparing ourselves to be part of this arrangement. So these are some of the things we are talking about. But I want to be more specific. Agriculture, which is a fundamental component in the development of this country. How far have we gone? The problem is that we have been giving hopes to the people that we have programs that seek to make sure that we have enough food in this country. And yet, as time went by, we keep on delaying the process. What has happened? And the Minister of Agriculture is unable to tell us whether, in fact, we are working towards our goals. And yet, Sierra Leone is a country of rice. The politics of rice is what controls Sierra Leone. You joke with rice in this country, you are overthrown. To us, you must be very, very clear about that. You occupy a government office and you joke with the rights of the people, you are fired. So, in fact, it's a clear indication that rice is a very important component. And to us, when we talk about agriculture in this country, it's rice production, without giving an opportunity for us to develop other sectors within the agricultural sector itself. So we keep on asking ourselves, how far have we gone? Why is it that the ministries are not communicating to members of the public to tell us what is going on? How come we have not achieved these goals which Madabio stipulated that he wanted to achieve? Now we look at other components as well. We are going to look at things like electricity, right? We still have problems with that. And a country really cannot develop with this kind of electricity in this country. We are unable to make sure that Sierra Leone has its full components, the kind of electricity that will make us develop industries, develop an effective agricultural system. So we ask ourselves the question again, how come most of these beautiful processes, these beautiful ideas have not come to effective fruition? We've been talking about the MCC. The MCC is a fantastic program. We accepted it. We celebrated in this country. But we are not hearing anything about it anymore. So again, it's a matter of communicating to members of the public. And this is why the public keeps on complaining that things are difficult. We are not getting what we are supposed to get. What is the government doing about that? I think they should tell us a little bit more about what is happening.
Honorable, one would say, I mean, you ruled for almost 11 years, the All People's Congress, you were in power. Someone would say that these problems didn't just appear from the blue. They've been here with us. You went through them yourself. I mean, while you were minister, you communicated some of these things. But they're still the same. I mean, you've pointed to indicators that are changing, but you've said that perhaps it's a PR problem, that they're maybe hyperbolizing, if you like, the whole situation, and the people are not feeling the impact of these indicators.
Well, it would be dishonest.
You should share the blame, don't you think so?
It would be dishonest to say that this government has not achieved. They have achieved quite considerably. But like I said, the people want to be convinced. You are a citizen of this country. You must have heard about the complaints all over the place. Things are difficult. Why are things difficult? We want the public to understand why things are difficult. This is what I'm talking about. When my government was in power, we confronted problems as well. We are honest enough to accept it. In fact, at one point we declared austerity to make sure that the public understood that we were going through difficult times. That was the honest address, the honest way of addressing an issue of that nature.
But they've not declared austerity.
They have not declared austerity. They need not declare austerity. They have their own system of doing things. But
I read a report from the IMF. It's saying that the country has been able to stabilize, the economy, their prospect for growth even by 2025 or so. Yeah.
No, there is no doubt about it.
These are indicators pointing to progress, don't you think so?
Well, I've said that there is progress.
Haven't we
said so? Haven't I said so? That they have achieved quite a number of goals. But I've also said that the problem is that even though they have made these achievements, the public is still not satisfied. The public believes that things have gone wrong.
But the question is, why are they not satisfied?
Why are they not satisfied? The question is for the government. Let them tell us what has gone wrong.
Mr. Minister, would you like to respond to this? He's saying that the people are not feeling the impact of these indicators.
Hon I.B is a legend and deserves a big amount of respect. So I'm going to be careful when I respond, I need to be clear that this is a man that I have utmost respect for his public service. In fact, last year at the Civic Festival, he was the co-chair, and I made it a point as well to make sure that he was on the stage to talk about how we can continue to bring this country together. I think his record of public service, not just in governance, but also in the media, deserves to be treated with high respect. He has achieved a lot in his life and in his career, and I benefited from that as I sit here when I was a child growing up. I remember when you were chair of the Media Partners for Children, and we used to be on all these panels together when I was president of CFN. So we have come a long way. But I wanted to just touch on a few things that he raised. I think at the top you said that the numbers are good, but that the people are not feeling it. I think I've explained that first you need to stabilize. We live in, the president alluded to the fact that the rest of the world is suffering from great instability. And the people are feeling the fact that rice prices are going down, that for the first time, there were no fuel lines, that fuel prices have been stable, that the Leone is not, a runaway currency that goes up and down as it used to be, that we are exporting oil, that we're exporting fish, that our fishermen and women are now feeling they're part of the economy, that we have increased, the health well-being of our people across the board, that women who go to deliver babies are no longer sentenced to almost a certainty of death, that the quality for our healthcare in our country has improved and continues to improve. We have not, I think Hon I.B knows that the transformation of a country is not going to take place overnight. The president has said that. It requires patience. He actually used those words in his speech. But make no mistake, every single indicator is pointing to the right direction. You cannot take off a plane without making sure that the plane can stay on a runway safely, and then you can now pivot. And I think what you have with the work that the president, his economic management team, the rest of us in governance have done, is to stabilize what was a chaotic outlook just a few years ago. This is because of a combination of factors, including insecurity, including the fact that there are some people who are costing us money. When you shut down the country for 1 week, when you say nobody should go to school, when you say nobody should go, it cost us money. It made investors scared to come here. It made people thought that they could not put their money into this country. So we have addressed comprehensively, and also on the policy landscape. There are major steps we're taking. Take data protection, which I'm sure he's very familiar with. If you don't have strong data protection laws and a regime, you cannot attract certain investment, for example, from Europe. This year, we've finally completed the work on our data protection policy in the history of this country. We now have an information policy, we have a records and archive policy, and I'm just talking about one ministry. We now have a film policy, which will also increase investment, for example, in our creative sectors in the country. We're working on a copyright law. All of these things were never done in this country for years. It has taken President Biu to come and do the difficult work to stabilize and lay the foundation. And so when we hear that, oh, why are people complaining? I had lunch with my dad, who is probably about your generation, over the festive period, and his siblings, many of his siblings and age mates, and they're all from Bunt. And we sat over the holiday period and we were talking about, reminiscing about the country. And so they were sharing with me that, look, people have always complained, and that this country has gone through some turbulent times. They told me about days where they used to smuggle cigarettes to sell cigarettes. They told me about days where they used to issue papers to buy a bag of rice. You needed to have cheats to be able to, not about having the money, for you to buy rice, and they give cheats. People sold that cheats to somebody else, and then that person sell them to somebody else. Not so, sir. All man, they add their own profits there in the cheat system. This is not too long ago. My father lived through this. Both of my parents are teachers. They told me about days when, and I remember this, they would work 6 months, 7 months, and they paid them 1 month. That was the norm. They told me that their payments, when it was, for example, towards the end of the year, if government decided to pay them, it was a big thing. Every teacher that lived in the east of the country would be paid at the SLMB school, and they will go there and to line to get 1 month's salary after 7 months of work. So when somebody tells you, sir, that people are complaining, it is okay. We should always, in a democracy, agitate for better. But I think we must also reflect on how far we have come and say, look at what the facts and the numbers tell you. We have a stable economy that is registering growth. We have foreign direct investments. We have a health sector where we've reduced our women who are dying in the health sector, which is huge. We have an agricultural sector where we've increased production and the price of rice has gone down for the first time. We're not suffering from scarcity for any of our major commodities. Our kids are in school. They are learning, they are performing. Take enrollment levels that were just before President Bill came to power. The biggest single investments in the future of this country, in the future that we all want, is in education. And the one president who has said he's not going to compromise on that is His Excellency President Bill. So yes, I understand that people have not felt the full transformation yet that will mean, oh, we're flying and getting every single thing. But boy, oh boy, make no mistake, I'd rather live in the era now that President Bill has ushered in than in any of the areas my fathers and my uncles were telling me about in that lunch that we were having over the festive period. And I'm sure Hon I.B will agree with me on that.
He asked about the MCC as well.
but again, on the MCC, it's a very interesting point because Hon I.B says he's not hearing anything about it. Hon I.B, I hope you're listening to our weekly press conferences and our recently
press conference.
Of course, it'll be an honor. But also on our recently concluded civic festival, people think the civic festival is about a concert. No, we have 5 town halls focused on substantive issues, each one full with young people asking questions of all the top people across government, finance, health, education, the Minister of Mines and all. We provide real-time data, real-time information. We have functional website. Minister of Agriculture have functional websites where they provide, in fact, on a monthly basis, they produce a newsletter that gives updates on how we're performing on our food security index. But not just them. I'll encourage you to pay attention to what FAO and WFP are saying. WFP, for example, releases a price index. Now looks at our performance by quarter. In the last quarter, they reported significant reduction in the inflation rates. They reported increase in food productivity, decrease in food pricing in the country, and a stabilization of the country. These are all facts. We have started releasing the Sierra Leone Daily Mail again, and the Daily Mail, which comes out today, has all of these numbers. We relaunched it just in December, and we'll continue to use different means and different methods to put this information out so experts like Dr. I.B will have access to them on their fingertip. We are doing it. We know this information is on our website. We know it's on our weekly press conference. We know we put out these things on a weekly basis. We know we convert it into Creole and multiple languages that we send out across the country. We know we'll continue to ring the bell. But I understand that ultimately, and this is where I agree with Hon I.B, it's going to be about how people feel and how the ordinary person feels. It's not just the numbers. It's not just numbers on productivity increasing or stabilization. People want better for themselves and for their kids. And some of this change, as the President has said, is not going to happen overnight. Some of this change is going to take time to really sink in and to be used to the new normal. But I think anybody who's paying attention will know that we have a president and a government that without doubt are delivering.
A lot of people are concerned, particularly about, the frequency of his travels. Many say it's a burden on the wage bill in Sierra Leone. And he has pointed to, negating reckless spending this year, serious business. Will that in any way, reduce his frequency of travel?
Last year, we became a member of the Security Council, president of the Security Council. We lead on the C10 in the reforms that the African Union is seeking. We became chair of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of States. Our president mobilized significant international resources. The health compact I just talked about, the MCC that we've mentioned, the other one, Mission 300 compacts that we're talking about, significantly. All of this directly attributable to its simple economics, very simple economics. If you want to change the global outlook of your country, I remember when I became a minister, and I have different tools that I use to track, for example, just perception of our country based on news reports online. Just 3 years ago, when I came here, we had a net negative perception in terms of the number of articles that were written about us, instability, this, that, blah, blah, blah. I want you to do the same checks today and see what we have done. And I can tell you how that translates into goodness for the country. It translates into the numbers I just told you we're going to report very soon, very positive numbers on the amount of people that are coming into our country. Remember, it was not too long ago that people used to say, nobody in the use airports, all man, they go through Guinea. Wait for the numbers, because they're going to come and they're going to shock these people who said that the reforms we are making were not going to make a change. We have seen those reforms. So you look at people who want to come here, who want to be in this country. You look at the investment that we're making. You look at how we close the year. Okay, President Bio's travels, people like to pay attention to them. But how did the president close the year? The president closed the year with a reaffirmation of the IMF program, with a significant commitment again to additional resources into our economy, significant resources from the World Bank, the EU, the US, all of these. It's simple maths, sir. Inputs versus outputs. If you're getting the kinds of outputs we are getting, not just in terms of our reputation, in terms of our standing, in terms of our, but also in real resources, in health, in the economy, in the hospitals that are built, in power stations that are being constructed across the country, you will want the president to travel more. But I want to make clear on something. The president does not engage in reckless travel. The president don't need per diem. The first gentleman of the country does not need per diem.
He's not using our state resources
No,
to travel.
he does not need. He's not going to travel because of per diem.
Okay.
If president want money, the slow side did, he get the money. So it's not about that.
Okay.
If he travels, he has said this himself. He leaves his family when he travels sometimes. This man, when he's most relaxed? I've seen him. When he's here, when he's in Month, when he's on the island. He's a man who loves nature. But he has to work for this country. He has to do the things I've just said, to bring in investment, to change the enduring image of our country, to interact and be part of these conversations that will mean our country will always be in the room. In Africa, the US government just gave only 4 countries their compact. Sierra Leone is one of them. You know why? It's because of the conversations His Excellency has been having. And I can assure you that he considers these things very carefully before he decides to say yes to any trip. But he will continue to do what is necessary, because, as I've said, the dividends, the returns, the accruals from those travels far outweigh whatever resources that we incur from them.
A lot of people are also concerned at the moment, Mr. Minister, and perhaps you need to turn attention to the immigration department. We're not performing too well in terms of immigration. I say this because earlier, in March, April last year, the US placed us on the, partial restriction list. And later on, before the year closed, we saw that they've gone full blast, A while ago, we had a lot of stories about, people getting our diplomatic passport for not even citizens of this country. What's happening?
So you see, in the president's speech, he mentioned that we have to also rule with honesty and openness. And I will agree with you that those news reports are troubling. Whenever an asset of our country is said to be in the hands of unsavory people, it's not good for all of us. And that's why the president was very proactive and said, we are going to institute a major review of how our passports, diplomatic passports, and all of those get into different hands. But as I said before, no matter how you scrutinize, it's also always possible that even your citizens will commit crimes. Criminals, you can never fully control for them. but it's the steps that you take to ensure that, as he said, to prevent them and also to respond. And in our response, I believe we have a robust system. The president has put in place a system to ensure that, we stop any unsavory people around the world having access to our assets. We make sure we investigate how they got them in the first place. And those people who are found, who are part of any schemes that were not above board, will be held accountable. So that's one. But you mentioned a bigger question about the visa ban and what it means for our country. It's really unfortunate from our perspective that our country remains on the visa ban, but I can tell you that once the partial ban was announced, we looked at what the official reasons were. And the government of Sierra Leone has been doing the work to respond to those official reasons. You know, visa overstays, that's not entirely on government. That's on all of us as citizens. That's why the president has created my Ministry of Information and Civic Education. The idea that the citizen will understand that whatever I do, especially outside of this country, is a reflection on my country. Immediately, the headline is not going to be what Mr. Jones did. It will be a Sierra Leonean. And so if you overstay, it's going to affect everybody else, including your own kids. So we need that national consciousness among our people and a sense of civic pride. That means we don't do. So there are things that are not entirely within our control. But what's in our control is, hey, we can increase public awareness. We can increase the quality of our screening, which is something that they have said is a concern here. The other big thing really was about our acceptance of deportees. They mentioned that in the past, Sierra Leone was not. So in the past, this is before President Bill came here. But just to be clear, our position is that we have been consistent and cooperating with the United States government and any government whatsoever when they can prove that these people that they have either in custody or they seek to deport are our citizens. We want Sierra Leoneans to come home when they have to come home and they have a place to come. So any claim that somehow we don't accept our citizens, we will contest that claim respectfully, of course. But what we're committed to doing is to continue to work with the U.S. government and any other government for that matter. Look, their immigration policies are their business. It's within the scope of their own laws and their countries, and we have to respect that. What we will continue to do is to demonstrate the progress in the public education campaigns that we do, is to demonstrate the progress in our screening and the steps that we're taking internally to assure them and give them confidence that, hey, we don't, again, this is not a crime-ridden country, it's not a terrorism-ridden country. No matter how you frame this, you'll be very hard-pressed to classify Sierra Leone as one of those countries that are going to bring in the worst elements or criminal elements into your country. So we want to continue to increase the confidence. And then the other question was about who we accept to come into our country. I know the Minister of Foreign Affairs has been working on that. We're clear. We will want to work with the U.S. government, and we're happy that despite the visa ban, we have lines that are open with the U.S. government, and we are cooperating on MCC, on the health compact, on other areas. So it's not a shutdown on our relationship. It's a temporary issue that, yes, seriously affects us and our citizens. We're going to continue to work, and we want to ask our citizens to join us in that effort. Those who have overstayed, please come back home, because that's also important. And they continue to look at those numbers. They have means and provisions to help you to come back safely so you're not forcefully deported. And those who get the privilege of going, who are there right now, who have not overstayed, we plead with you, in the interest of our country, for the love of our country, do not overstay, because it affects all of us.
Honorable, I mean, although most times, oppositions in Africa specialize in criticizing, there are other proactive roles, like, urging the government to succeed, in other words. As a veteran, politician, professional, academic, honorable, who served parliament for the longest time, what concrete, pieces of advice, if you like, would you, if you were asked to give the government, would you give at this time?
Well, we have made it very, very clear over the period that we in the APC, we are part of the governance structure of the state. We cannot run away from it.
Yeah.
We take part in deliberations in parliament. We pass laws. We have local councils all over the country, in Makeni, in Padloko, all over the place. We head those councils. So we cannot run away from the fact that we are part of the administration of the state. But of course, in a two-party autocracy like we have here in this country, where only two parties matter, and when I discussed it with the president, he smiled. I said, it's a dictatorship, just two parties. They run the show. The other parties have no essence.
Are you okay with that? Are you
I'm
happy
not okay
that
with
it's like that?
I'm not okay with that. I'm merely stating that they too could have been part of the governance structure. But we have not created a system that allows them to play a role. It would appear that in this country, if you had not served as a government, you have no future. And this is why it's only the APC and SLPP that continue to rule the country. But like I said earlier on, we are part of the structures of the state. And I have done quite a number of things to prove that we are part of the structure of the state. Whenever there's a government program, I turn up. And I make my own contributions as well. When there is a matter of public concern, I raise the flag. For example, when people are talking about the drugs in this country, Kush and other things, I wrote a letter to the president, which he received. And later when I met him, we sat down, we discussed it. Because I cannot run away from the fact that I'm a citizen of this country.
Senior one as well.
And we should continue to be part of this country. This is why even when I criticize issues, it has to be born out of honesty. You do not criticize just because you belong to one party and you want to hit at the other party. This brings me to my point. Talking about governance and the image of the government as it is. The government should take into consideration of a very, very serious fact that because of the weaknesses of our policies in structuring the state, we have ended up with a situation whereby half of the population does not support the SLPP. Half of the population is APC. The result is that when the APC comes to power, half of the population would be SLPP and would not support the APC. And it comes to the whole concept of public perception. How come, even though Minister Ba has narrated all the successes this morning, if I walk out of this hall now, this studio now, and go to the streets and do a vox pop, you'll discover about half of the people will still say that the government has not performed well. So we ask the fundamental question when we sit together to discuss politics. How do we work out a structure that will ensure that even the opposition is an effective part of the governance of the state? And to also make sure that the opposition informs its public, its own members, that they should be part of the system of the structures of the country. But as of now, a good number of people, APC, think that, oh, not a government. That should not be the attitude. And when the APC comes to power, they say, oh, not a government, they wait and come out to Gokandi. This should not be the attitude. As long as we continue to think this way, we will not develop this country. The cohesiveness of the country, of the state, is very, very important. You go to the United States, you have the Democrats, you have the Republicans, but there's a fundamental principle that brings them together. You go to the UK, you have the Labour, the Conservatives, but there's a fundamental thing that brings them together. That is what is absent here. Here it is just a matter of APC, SLPP. The one man sits down for 5 years waiting to kick the other man out, and nothing happens to salvage the state.
So in essence, I mean, you're painting the pictures, though we're having people who are very dishonest. I mean, statesmanship has reduced. You know, commitment to the state and nationalism, if you like, it's nothing to write home about. Is it about people changing their character, their behavior, or the political parties themselves? Perhaps it's individualistic, don't you think?
We should educate our people as well. When I was in Parliament, I was chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And we had a problem in New York about our embassy there. And the minister, David Francis, wanted to approach it from a wholesome point of view. So he said, Mr. Chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee, could you travel with me to New York? We went to New York. We interviewed people. He representing the interests of the APC, SLPP. I was there representing my own party and Parliament. We came out with the reports. I was criticized. I was not supposed to travel with an SLPP minister. These are some of the problems we have in this country. Until we break that myth, this country will not develop. It will still be a division, a divisive country of APC and SLPP. This is why I call it a two-party dictatorship. And the people are not benefiting. This is the position I've always held.
During the tenure of the APC, you had this idea called the ABC Secretariat, Attitudinal and Behavioral Change. And the SLPP, they have the Civic Fest, for example, what Mr. Ba is doing across the country, engaging people, about governance so that, if you like, the people are brought close to the government. Perhaps we should also reintroduce this civic, subject in schools as well, teaching people about nationalism, your duty to the state as a citizen. Don't you think this would help?
Well, the SLPP has a ministry in charge of civic activities. Okay. I think the minister should bring it up in cabinet. You can develop a cabinet paper to make sure that it becomes state policy. I agree with you. We should begin to teach our children about civics. Let them know what statehood is all about. Otherwise, they will grow up with the mentality of APC, SLPP. And that is what is our problem these days. And when I was Minister of Information, we put together a concept called the attitudinal change. An effort to ensure that we educate the public about what statehood is all about and the role of a citizen in governance and all of that. When this government came up with another idea. These are all efforts. But in the end, I think we should catch them when they are young. Go to the schools and tell them what statehood is all about. Otherwise, we do not want to continue this way. Now, President Manifesto will spend sleepless nights believing that he has done very, very well, but also accepting the fact that there are people who do not seem to believe that he has done well. And the criticism is not found on any facts. It's based on the fact that he simply belongs to another party. He's not one of us. So you look at it, he will be perceived from that angle as well. And as Nkrumah was president here, he did his own best, but some people necessarily never accepted him as a successful president, even though he did a little bit here and there. This kind of mentality is what is disturbing the state. And what do we do to answer to these questions? Again, it brings to the point of the PR, right? Whenever we go, for example, when I traveled with David Francis to the United States, and we went to the office of the Secretary of State, they were impressed that here was a minister from one party coming to this office with the opposition. They were very impressed. That was a marketable way of doing things. We went to the Secretary of Defense. He was very impressed. I found a Leone lady there. She was very impressed that APC, SLPP, now in a council. This is the kind of thing we should begin to develop in this country, right? But whenever we attempt to do so, we introduce politics in it. And once you introduce politics in it, you destroy it, right? So the business of even the government's concept of trying to make sure that we unite the country, we bring this and that, it's always suspect. APC never believes that SL will come up with an idea that is apolitical. Just like APC always believes that whenever SLP comes with an idea, it is not apolitical. So this kind of suspicion will not help this country. Perhaps we need to have a conference in this country to discuss these issues. Apart from just talking about elections, who won and who did not win, what do we do as a people to make sure that we sit together to discuss the future of this country? Make sure that our children feel part and parcel of the state. This is what is absent now. You tell people not to destroy the electrical cables, they do not care. It is not their government. It is not, they don't own it. It is government property. So these are the kind of things which we begin to address. So even though we are talking about achievements, results, etc., etc., I also fundamentally believe that we should bring the people to be part of the governance system of this country.
Mr. Barr, would you like to respond?
Well, I'm happy that the senior citizen is saying all the beautiful things that he's saying. I agree to a very large extent with the sentiments he's expressed. I want to make clear that we already teach civics in our schools. President Leone in his first term established the Council for Civic Education and Democracy. We have created new curriculum, and civics is now part of the core school curriculum. It's a standalone subject as well as incorporated into the schools. The problem is it's going to take time for this to take core, and that's why the president moved from just the council to now creating a full ministry, so we can institutionalize it and we can make it part of the national consciousness. We have also worked with UNESCO and developed a civic education policy and a strategy, which UNESCO referred to as one of the best I've seen in the world. It's called the Cotton Tree Civic Education Pillars, that really looks at the 5-6 different pillars about how we love our country, clean it, heal it, digitize it, how we make sure we promote inclusion, and all of those components are in it. So now it's a question of getting the resources to fully roll it out, because you have to do not just within the school system, but also within the national public consciousness as well. I have to say, though, I respectfully disagree with the notion that two-party system is necessarily autocratic. Democracy is a reflection of the wishes of the people. By that description, Hon I.B, many of the democracies in the world will be referred to as well as autocratic, because the United Kingdom is essentially a two-party system, the United States is essentially a two-party system, and these are, by some definition, what people refer to as the examples of functional democracies in the world. Democracy is a reflection of what the people want. If the people want these two political party systems, I think it's a question of how you make sure, and that's why we advocate and support the PR system, that if there are smaller parties, you create room for them to also have a say. But I don't, as a political science student, necessarily believe that, you should just create a system where you say, oh, no, just pass the power over, well, not to the other person. No, democracy should be what the people desire. And I think the people have made clear in every election that they've had. In 1996, we had, 16, 18, in fact, at some point, I think we had about 18 political parties. Well, people chose the two that they want. So people have choices, but they have continued to believe that the political parties that are best organized and reflect their wishes. And I'm very proud that the Sierra Leone People's Party is, at this moment, the only political party that was in power at independence that is still in power. I'm very proud of that, because of the legacy that the political party of the SLPP has built for this country. And we look at the numbers in terms of how the SLPP's record on democracy, on the economy, when the SLPP is in power, we are very proud of that record, and we're happy to put that record against any other political party at any time. And let me make it clear as well. I don't believe that, look, we cannot say that we want democracy and we frown at reasonable disagreement. Democracy requires anti-sameness. We cannot all be the same. We will not have a functional democracy if we all on one side with it. Sometimes I think we're over obsessed with this idea that we all come together on one side. No, we don't need to. In Germany, for example, the state pays the political party foundations to invest in what they call political education, civic education, not to teach the kids about joining the political party, but what the political parties stand for. So kids from a young age, as part of their civic education, they understand that if you want a socialist path, these are the political parties that represent the socialist path. But what does the socialist path mean? It means this for the economy. It means this is how the resources will be shared. What does SLPP stand for? We have a political history. We have a political ideology. I think what we should be investing in is really spelling out what the ideologies of our respective political parties are, and be clear, like we are in this studio, that just because Hon I.B is APC does not mean he does not deserve the respect and the modicum that he's earned. And we can have reasonable, sometimes heated debates, but they should not necessarily translate to hatred, or as he said, and this is where I agree with him, that we should not have a monopoly over the resources just because we emerge with about 50 plus something % of the number of votes. And that's why we support the proportional representation. And that's why President Bio has said very clearly that we should think about proportional representation not just with respect to the number of seats that are allocated in Parliament, but also he has said we should expand the thinking to how we distribute state resources. I think that's a very reasonable idea. And you know, he mentioned inclusiveness. I'm happy he said that the president will sit down with a senior citizen like him and listen to his counsel. In the ministry, I benefit from his counsel. I call him, I ask him to chair something, he shows up, because we believe that we can, and I know he's APC, he's committed to his APC cause, but he's a Sierra Leonean who has great ideas to share. That's the principle of President Bio. Not to judge people by the color of their skin or dare I say the tribe or religion that they identify with, but by the content of their character and the quality of the ideas that they have to offer. And that's something that I think we should continue to inculcate. That's what the civic education program that we have is about, is to celebrate diversity in our thinking, is to not necessarily say, oh, we should create small parties just for the sake of small parties. I don't believe in that. I actually believe that if there are small parties, yes, they should compete. It's a competition of ideas. I don't believe that political parties should be based solely exactly, for example, in Sierra Leone right now, sometimes it feels like because of your tribe or where you're born or your region or your last name. I think we should continue to move from that. That's why, and the other day I was criticized for telling school students that in the next civic festival, I will invite the political parties to have booths, because I want school kids to be exposed to the political philosophy of the political parties. So you make up your mind not just because of who the party come out, but because you're attracted to the political philosophy and the record of the political party as a party. That is the foundation of a democracy. That's what happens in other advanced democracies. But I think some people did not fully grasp or
that's politics. Yeah.
choose to take it out of context. But that's why for me, I don't mind. I think people can see, again, this is the other thing about, oh, people are going to criticize. It's fine. In America, they say dissent is the highest form of patriotism. I am happy with dissent. I don't want to come into this studio and I tell you about the good things that President Bio has done and nobody's there to point out the parts where we have not done good. We need people to point out that, oh, yes, we agree as he has done, but look, it's not translated into people's lives. We need that. I need people to say, oh, but if you do that, because these voices remind you and keep you on a path. What is bad is when it becomes so toxic and when it becomes a driver of not just a wedge, but violence and a dismissal of anything that is good. I think that's the balance sometimes that we struggle with.
Mr. Minister, we're rounding off soon. Something I would like to bring to your attention is that the MRC just released their media report, you know, and these are horrific statistics about non-payment of salaries, abuse of workers. 25.9% of journalists never received a monthly salary in the report. Only 33% received their salaries on time. 41%, you know, receive salaries late. Are you concerned? I mean, because you deal with these people, with us, on a daily basis, and it's under your ministry that, in fact, the SLBC is domiciled. You know, so you have a cordial relationship, if you like, with journalists. What can the government do in a situation like this, in light of the recent report?
So, I think it's important to say, if what we're referring to as horrific, when we refer to the media, is non-payment of salaries, it means we have come a long way. Because in your days, if you say there's been a MRCG or media watchdog report is out and it's horrific, it will be a journalist has been killed, a journalist has been disappeared, a journalist, you know, has been attacked, it will be people are in jail, it will be people like... So it's important too, for even as we say it's horrific, to take a moment to reflect on how far we have come as a people and our commitment to a free, open and democratic society where not a single journalist is in jail here for what they say. Not anybody has been prosecuted here for what they do. While we have repealed criminal libel, something that previous governments, including Hon I.B, made a commitment and tried to do, but President Bio finished the job. I think it's important to say that we have improved over 26 places in the World Press Freedom Index. We're one of the best performers, one of the best increases in the world on all of these things. And what you're seeing in that report is a product of two things. One, it's the liberalization of the media space. When Hon I.B was Minister of Information, how many radio stations were there? You will grab today, come on a EU building, and basically say you could touch all the radio stations and that day you will touch all of them. Guaranteed. Today, just community radio stations in Sierra Leone, you have over 100 and something of them. You talk about the liberalization of the media space. We have media departments and faculties now in most of the major universities. So you have, it's a new creation of, hey, just last year, Truth Media, you know, what's their name? Epic was celebrating 5 years yesterday. New media houses springing up, Liberty, and they're all doing well. And I think your boss, Ambassador Junior Navo, deserves credit. He's one of the first media entrepreneurs who took a big bet in the media in this country and put money and brought young people in and said, hey, let's do that. So once you've done things like that, the space is open, you're going to have these challenges now because A, it's the laws of demand and supply and the laws of economics. We do suffer from what we call media poverty in Sierra Leone. And you know, we did a big conference on that when my predecessor, Rado Suare, was minister, and President Bio, in his speech at the Presidential Media Cocktail, has said this is something we're going to focus on. How do we support the media to move from media poverty to at least stability and generating resources? What do we do? We're working right now on an advertisement law. We're reviewing the IMC Act. But you have to remember, government cannot be dictatorial in the media space. Because if we decide now tomorrow that because this is our power, right? If you don't pay your journalist for 3 months, we're going to shut you down. The MRCG headline will be different. Government shut down opposition media. Government muzzled the media. You know what I mean? Yes, so we have to work a really fine balance here. That's why we have developed the most comprehensive, and thanks to MRCG because we worked on this together, information and media policy, the first in the history of the country. We've just developed it. We now have, yesterday in our leadership meeting, we sanctioned an implementation plan of that. It's going to help all of this. Our commitments, the creation of the National Fund for Public Interest Media, supporting advertisement, but also the media has to take some responsibility. They need to consolidate. You cannot continue to mushroom if you want to make money. You need to bring some big heads together. And you know, I've also said this before when I talk to the media. There's a difference between the skill sets you need to be a journalist and the skill sets you need to run a business. Just because you're a good journalist does not mean you can run a good paper. We need to understand that. And I think our media schools need to continue to teach that as well if you're not doing that well. You need to also invest and bring COOs into these media companies to run these media companies to help you think about it as a business. How do you generate business and how do you manage it in a good way? So those are different issues, but I can tell you, you know, a way to put that is a rich man's problem. We have a rich man's problem when it comes to the media in Sierra Leone because we are no longer talking about the old age things of muzzling, killing, jailing, disappearing. We're not there. We're talking about the liberalization of the space thanks to the good work that people like Kargbo I.B. You know, I remember when I was a young man listening to him on UN radio, you know, listening to him. These are the champions of press freedom in this country who called for the repeal of the criminal libel law, which President Bill has implemented. So I think it's important to say, you know, give this context to that report. That is what we call growing pains. It's the result of progress that you're seeing these challenges. And we're going to work with not just MRCG, but SLAG and other partners to do what we can do as a government with restraint to facilitate the process that will allow us to address these problems.
Lastly, Mr. Minister, I'm not sure you've dealt with this in any of your, you know, weekly press briefing, but I've been reading the audit report for 2023 of over $10.5 million disappeared. Ministry of Welfare, Hajj funds, the Jury Government Hospital. Will the ACC be investigating these people?
Yeah, so I think in the past I have had some very interesting conversations about the audit report. It's very easy for us to take the audit report headlines and say, headline, the audit report, money's disappeared. You remember, we have a distinguished former member of parliament here. The procedure is this. An auditor comes in, and I ran businesses in the past, an auditor comes in and looks at your operations and says, hey, this table you say you buy, but I don't see the 3 other codes. So therefore, I'm going to put this as it was improperly done. You know, you cannot account for this right now, within a very specific period. So say, oh, you know, we will do this now. So they will name all the irregularities and they will add them up and say, well, in terms of irregularities, it amounts to, and when you take the whole of governments together, then they aggregate that. It says maybe like a project, they say, oh, this project has not been done yet. And then they'll put that in. And then you read the report and say, 10 billion stolen. It's not always a straight line. And then the responsibility of Parliament is to review that and to look at and an audit helps you not just to say where things didn't go right, but also to help you to make reforms to prevent in the future. So Parliament looks at that, summons, and then Parliament and ACC, you know, they've had this question in the past. ACC will look at it. ACC can now pick on some issues to do some investigation and say, wait, this seems like this was a blatant case of misappropriation. And then the ACC will institute the investigation. I think the ACC has a record of looking at the audit reports, conducting investigations, holding people accountable, and I trust that they will continue to do the same. I'm very proud, having said all of that, that when you read that report and take the Ministry of Information and Civic Education, we have an absolutely clean bill of health because of the work that we have done and our commitments to. Oh, absolutely. I'm very, very proud of that because of our commitment to integrity, to openness, and you know, the standards that I think that we have brought to not just public service, but all the positions that we have been privileged to hold in the past. So I wanted to blow the horn of my colleagues, my permanent secretary and my team for doing a very good job.
And the cooperation.
Yes.
A few messages here. We'll just race through some of them actually. We're out of time. And again, this person is saying, Mohammed A. Kamara, please, Mr. Maduta, ask Mr. Siba, as a Democratic Party, can he help us as a party supporters to show us the June 24, 2023 election results, either from the party website through the RFS? Spaceman is saying, Minister, in your opinion, I want you to tell us more about living standards in the country. Please tell us if the people are living a better life or not in a country where light is not everywhere in the country. Water and quality health care is a major challenge. Tell us if necessary for Sierra Leoneans to travel to India and Ghana for medical, because I don't really know the difference between India and Ghana when we are talking about quality health care system in the world. Honorable, life in the country is difficult. I want you to agree why each time you come on the radio you keep repeating the same testimony, and there is no difference in the life of the people. I will give you a leak about the government hospital in Lunge, Port Loko. If you don't believe, I will challenge doctor and will provide the evidence that I have honorable. The healthcare system in the government hospital at Lunge is very poor. Children are dying in the hospital every day because doctors are requesting for a huge amount of money to provide treatment for children. Parents are paying 650,000 leones for oxygen and for each child if they are sick. And if parents cannot afford the money, automatically the children will die. I have 2 oxygen bottles on my phone when I help someone to afford oxygen for his child. I want the government to pay attention in the Lunge government hospital. There are a lot of messages actually, but I think because of time, I think these are a few of the main comments. One is asking about, inquiring about the Lunge government hospital. The other is talking about election reforms. The other is talking about living standards in the country.
I want to thank the citizens for these questions and the comments. I think that's what democracy is about. That's what Hon I.B is saying. I think just to be clear on the standard of living, I've just mentioned the numbers, I've mentioned the reality. Even if you take again just the price of rice, the price of essential commodities, those are the realities. My job here is to explain to you what I see, what I know, what the facts are, and I also understand that people's reality as well is say, well, maybe I have not felt that. But I remember going to school when I was driven out of school for school fees. I remember that. I went to Bishop Carter, commonly called Kaneke School. I remember that they pull in a line in between when you go to class today because we not pay school fee. Not a single student, not a single parent suffers the indignity of that in Sierra Leone anymore, thanks to President Bio. I remember when paying for basic education, Beke, the exam fee, or WASC, the exam fee. I remember that my mom was a school teacher, by the way, who used to be a teacher that would work 5-6 months without being paid. I remember the pain that she used to go through, suffering. It did take Osusu for me up for pay with exam fee. I remember that. I know that today that's no longer the case, thanks to the reforms of President Bio has done. I remember those things. So when people say, oh, you're telling stories, I'm not telling stories that are not rooted in reality. A lot of our parents, that's what they were. Their lives were based around paying our fees, paying our exam fees and all that. We've removed those costs from them. We're bringing the prices down. Inflation has slowed. It was 55%. It's now in the single digits. We're experiencing growth in the economy. That's the reality. It is not yet fully reflected in the people's lives. I accept that in terms of how people feel. And that's what the president said in his speech. And he has said very clearly that this year, you will feel the action. There will be more and more tangible action because you need stability for you to take off. We've had a year of stability. We're going to get to this action in 2026. And these citizens, all of them, with open minds, do their own parts because we need you to be part of the food revolution that we're part of in the country. We need you to buy local. When you go to the markets too, buy salon food. That's the money that's going to go. So that's not what government is going to do. That's what you as a citizen too should be part of. So on those very specific questions about Lunge Hospital, I'll raise it with my colleagues in the Ministry of Health. Okay. I thank citizens for bringing that forward. But make no mistake, on health outcomes, we've had a 75% reduction in maternal mortality. That's a fact. We've been giving awards for that all over the world. In the past, if they say woman no go born, you almost worry, say certainty in life and death. We no longer experience that in Sierra Leone. It's still too high. The reduction has now slowed down, and President Bio said at the Civic Festival, he challenged the minister, he said, you need to bring it down, remove that one, continue to bring it down. And that's work that we're going to continue to do. But nobody can tell me or make me accept that we have not seen progress. We have seen dramatic progress in our health outcomes because of the work that this government has done. We just declared an end to Mpox. Yeah. We got Mpox here, which is something that can happen, but it's what you do to respond to it. We had a great public health response. We did not shut down the country. We did not quarantine any areas. We did not stop the economy. We managed it. and we declared an end to it. We're still dealing with the health crisis, the Kush crisis, with the social aspect of that. It requires all of our effort, but you had the president make no mistake. He said he's going to go after anybody who is involved in smuggling and bringing drugs into this country. Just yesterday, I know that, for example, at the airport, they seized hundreds of boxes of tramadol that people are trying to smuggle in. We have declared that tramadol is no longer a drug that can be used in Sierra Leone, the tablets. We have declared that. So we're taking the steps that you can take as a government, but if somebody wants to smuggle it in, that's on all of us, and law enforcement is going to do our part, but the citizens too have to do their part. So 2026, President Bio has said it's a year of action. I add, it also should be a year of civic action. All of us should be part of that. And I should close by saying, at the Civic Festival, the President also declared January 18 as National Remembrance Day. We've started making plans for how we will commemorate and observe that day of reflection. He said he wants it to be a day of civic education, a day to honor the victims and survivors of the war, a day that we focus on peace, a day that we focus on storytelling to remind this younger generation of what it means, war. And we're putting plans in place for that, and we'll be able to announce those plans very soon. It's going to include a lot of work with the media, a lot of work as well with our friends and colleagues across the political aisle, because when it comes to our memory of the Civil War, it's an opportunity to, as you have said, sir, to bring the country together, to remind us of what is bigger than all of us. Salon, big pass we are.
Right, thank you, Mr. Bar. Honorable departing statements.
Well, I just want to say that the minister here is doing his best to put a very strong case for his party. And he also realizes the fact that we all should work towards a one united country. And this is the goal for all patriotic Sierra Leoneans. We are in the process of putting together our structures in the APC for our lower level elections. Okay. We are going to present to this country a very, very, very excellent candidate who will take over the leadership of this country.
Who is that candidate?
We are in the process of looking out for
choosing.
him.
Okay.
It's Hon I.B.
But we are going to ensure that we come out with a candidate that is acceptable by everybody.
Okay.
North, south, east. Okay. We are doing this deliberately because we want to change the face of this country and want to bring back happiness to this country. We are working towards a country that should be united, a country where it really does not matter whether you come from Kalang or from Cambia, or whether you come from Kabbalah or from Bonth. To us, we are all the same people. When I first met President Bio years back as a young man, then he had just been appointed the Secretary of State in charge of information. And I had problems with NPRC at the time because they said that I had published a newspaper without an imprint. My boss made that error. It was Mother who said, I'm doing this story because a man of fair play. No, why do you want to shut down Mr. Kargbo's newspaper just because of an imprint? And that was why I respected him from that day. And I also believe that he came to power with the clear understanding that he wanted to achieve certain goals for the development of this country. But now that he has done all that he's done, and we're very certain, those of us in the opposition, we keep on discussing these things. We keep on saying, criticize only when it is necessary. Because we don't want to rent this country apart. Okay. And after he sees we do not see a strong alternative to Hon I.B now, and we would work towards presenting to this country a strong person who would take over from Hon I.B and make this country develop.
All right. Honorable, thank you so much indeed. Thank you, Minister Bar, for being on the program this morning. I truly appreciate your time. And to those of you who followed, thank you so much indeed. We're wrapping up this fourth segment of the program.